Welcome to Podcast Philosophy, the show where we confront the questions that challenge our deepest assumptions about reality. Today we're asking, what makes you, you? Is your identity tied to your body? Is it rooted in your mind? Or is it something else entirely? To explore this, let's begin with one of the most unsettling transformations in literature, Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning and discovers that his body is no longer his own. His arms and legs have been replaced by thin, alien appendages. His back is rounded, hardened into an exoskeleton. He tries to speak, but his voice is gone. He attempts to stand, but his limbs do not obey in the way they once did. And yet, his mind is untouched. He remembers his name. He remembers his family. He remembers his job and his obligations. His thoughts are still human. His desires, his beliefs, his fears, these remain unchanged. Gregor knows who he is. But the moment his family sees him, their reaction makes something immediately clear. They do not see Gregor. His mother faints. His father recoils in horror and forces him back into his room. His sister, Greta, is the only one who initially attempts to help him, but even she begins to withdraw over time. At first, she brings him food. She speaks to him. But then, something shifts. She stops addressing him directly. She stops calling him by his name. She begins to refer to him as it. And finally, she makes her declaration. If it were really Gregor, he would have left us by now. So, what's happening here? Intuitively, we would say that Gregor is still Gregor. His body has changed, but his consciousness remains intact. If identity is psychological, if it rests in memory, beliefs, and self-awareness, then there should be no question. His physical form should be irrelevant. And yet, something about the loss of his human body seems to strip away his identity in a way that cannot be ignored. So, is the body necessary for identity? If our initial intuition is that Gregor remains himself because his mind is unchanged, then it would seem that the body is not essential. We don't normally assume that someone becomes a different person when they lose a limb or undergo a drastic physical change, right? After all, every cell in our body is slowly replaced throughout our lifetime. But if the body is irrelevant, then we should also be willing to accept the inverse, that Gregor would not be Gregor if his mind had changed, even if his body remained the same. Let's consider that scenario. What if Gregor had woken up in his normal body, but with no memory of who he was? No recollection of his name, his family, his past. No beliefs, no desires, no trace of his former self. Would he still be Gregor? If we are being consistent, if we accept that identity is purely psychological, then we should conclude that no, he would not be Gregor. Even though he looks the same, even though his DNA is unchanged, if his mind has been entirely wiped and replaced with something new, then he is no longer the same person. But here's the problem. Many people would say that Gregor is still Gregor in this case, that if his body remains unchanged, then so does his identity. His family wouldn't suddenly abandon him if he had amnesia. They wouldn't treat him as a stranger. They would try to remind him of who he was. They would insist that he is Gregor, even if he no longer believes it. And now, we have a contradiction. When Gregor's body changes but his mind remains intact, we instinctively say that he remains the same. But when his mind changes but his body remains intact, we also instinctively say that he remains the same. These two conclusions cannot both be true. So, which is it? If Gregor's identity survives the loss of his body, then that suggests that the mind is what truly defines the self. But if Gregor's identity also survives the loss of his mind, then that suggests that the body is what defines the self. It can't be both. This is where metamorphosis forces us into a corner. It seems to initially suggest that the body is irrelevant. After all, Gregor still feels like Gregor, so why should his grotesque new form matter? But then, it pulls the rug out from under us. His transformation does matter. It matters because identity isn't just about what we believe we are. It's about something more. So, what is that something? If identity isn't strictly tied to the body, and if it isn't strictly tied to the mind, then what is the principle that unites them? To push this question even further, let's consider one of the oldest thought experiments in philosophy, the ship of Theseus. The story is simple. Imagine a great ship, the ship of Theseus, docked in a harbor. Over time, as the ship ages, its wooden planks begin to rot, so they are gradually replaced. One by one, each plank, each mast, each beam is swapped out with a new, identical part. Eventually, every single piece of the ship has been replaced. Not a single original plank remains. Now ask yourself, is it still the ship of Theseus? Intuitively, most people would say yes. The ship was never destroyed. It was maintained, preserved, gradually repaired. At no point did it stop being the ship of Theseus. It was simply improved, like a person aging while their cells regenerate. But here's where the real problem begins. Suppose that instead of discarding the old planks, someone collected them and rebuilt the original ship piece by piece in a different location. When they finish, they have reconstructed a ship that is physically identical to the original ship of Theseus, using the very same materials. Now, which one is the real ship of Theseus? Is it the one that has been repaired over time, standing in the original harbor? Or is it the one built entirely from the original materials? You can't say both. That would mean that two distinct things are somehow the same object, and yet both have a legitimate claim to being the real ship. So, which matters more, continuity or composition? If you believe the real ship of Theseus is the one that remained in the harbor, despite having none of its original parts, then you are saying that identity is about continuity. As long as something persists over time, even as its physical components are swapped out, it remains the same entity. But if you believe the real ship of Theseus is the one rebuilt from the original materials, then you are saying that identity is about physical composition, that what something is fundamentally tied to what it is made of, regardless of how it was maintained over time. This dilemma maps almost perfectly onto the problem of personal identity. Your body, like the ship of Theseus, is constantly being replaced at a microscopic level. Over a span of years, nearly all of your cells have turned over. Your atoms are different. The matter that composes you today is not the same as the matter that composed you a decade ago, and yet we still consider you to be the same person. But imagine a second scenario. Suppose that, instead of changing gradually, we could remove all of your cells at once and replace them instantaneously with an identical set of new ones. Would you still be you? What if instead of replacing them, we transported all of your original cells elsewhere and reassembled them into an exact duplicate of your former self? Now we have the same problem as the ship of Theseus. Which one is the real you? Is it the one that underwent gradual change, maintaining psychological and physical continuity over time? Or is it the one made up of the very same biological material that once composed you? There's no clear answer. And the paradox doesn't end there. Consider the implications for teleportation. If one day we develop technology that allows us to transport people across space by scanning their exact atomic structure, destroying their original body, and reconstructing an identical body in a new location, is that person still the same? If so, what exactly is being preserved? The person who stepped into the machine is physically gone. The person who stepped out looks the same, has the same memories, thoughts, and feelings. But is that continuity real, or is it an illusion? Or take another example. Split brain cases in neuroscience. When the corpus callosum, the structure that connects the two hemispheres of the brain, is severed, The brain essentially forms two independent streams of consciousness. The left hemisphere controls speech and reasoning, while the right processes visual and spatial information. In some experiments, the two hemispheres have even been shown to hold contradictory beliefs. So which one is the real person? If you were to split the brain completely and sustain both hemispheres in separate bodies, which one is you? Are they both you? Or did you cease to exist the moment the split occurred? This, again, mirrors the ship of Theseus. If a single entity is divided into two, which one maintains its identity, or does neither? So far, we've entertained multiple theories. Identity might be psychological, persisting through memory, beliefs, and personality. It might be physical, requiring continuity of the body or its materials, or it might be neither. Perhaps identity is an illusion altogether, a useful fiction we impose on the world. And that last idea, that identity itself is a kind of illusion, might be the most unsettling answer of all. Because if we take these thought experiments to their logical conclusion, we may be forced to admit that there is no core, unchanging self. That what we call identity is merely a story we tell ourselves to impose order on a chaotic and ever-changing reality. But if that's the case, then what are we holding responsible when we talk about moral or legal accountability? What are we preserving when we fight to keep memories alive? What are we mourning when someone we love is gone?